Good morning, everybody, and a very happy new year to you. Lovely to see you, and thank you for joining us as we continue our adventure through the Psalms. Basically, I thank my colleagues for doing some wonderful talks over the last couple of weeks, over the holiday. I'm glad to be back with you again this morning as we continue our adventure through them. May I remind you of the context where we're at. Today we're in Psalm 44, which is a fascinating psalm. We'll talk about that in a minute. Just to remind you of the context, there are 150 psalms. And we're now in book 2. Book 1 is Psalms 1 to 41. We're now in book 2 this morning, which is 42 to 72. But we're looking this morning at Psalm 44. Here we go. Psalm 44. Sorry, glasses on. We've heard with our ears, O God, our ancestors have told us what deeds you performed in their days, in the days of old. You with your own hand drove out the nations, but them you planted, you afflicted the peoples, but them you set free. For not by their own sword did they win the land, nor did their own arm give them the victory, but your right hand and your arm, and the light of your countenance, for you delighted in them. You are my King and my God. You command victories for Jacob. Through you we push down our foes. Through your name we tread down our assailants. For not in my bow do I trust, nor can my sword save me. But you've saved me from our foes, and have put to confusion those who hate us. In God we've boasted continually, and we give thanks to your name forever. Yet you've rejected us and abased us, and have not gone out with our armies. You've made us turn back from the foe, and our enemies have gotten spoil. You've made us like sheep for the slaughter, and have scattered us among the nations. You've sold your people for a trifle, demanding no high price for them. You've made us a taunt of our neighbours, the derision and scorn of those around us. You've made us a byword among the nations, a laughing stock among the peoples. All day long my disgrace is before me, and shame has covered my face at the words of the taunters and revilers, at the sight of the enemy and the avenger. All this has come upon us, yet we've not forgotten you, or been false to your covenant. Our heart has not turned back, nor have our steps departed from your way. Yet you've broken us in the haunts of jackals, and covered us with deep darkness. If we'd forgotten the name of our God, or spread out our hands to a strange God, would not God discover this? For he knows the secrets of the heart. Because of you we are being killed all day long, and accounted as sheep for the slaughter. Rouse yourself. Why do you sleep, O Lord? Awake, do not cast us off forever. Why do you hide your face? Why do you forget our affliction and oppression? For we sink down to the dust, our bodies cling to the ground. Rise up, come to our help, redeem us for the sake of your steadfast love. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, we'll talk about in a moment this extremely courageous psalm. But essentially, to try and understand Psalm 44, as many it's often put it into sections. And essentially, I think Psalm 44 is essentially in 4 sections. The first section is a talk about the glories of the past, what our ancestors told us about the glories of the past. That's the first section. That's verses 1 to 8. Verses 9 to 16 tells them where they're at now, that things are not good. They're being counted like sheep to the slaughter, and they're being held in disgrace. That's Psalm. That's verses 9 to 16. The next few verses, 17 to 22. Are essentially a vindication. He's saying basically, it's not our fault. We haven't turned to other gods. We've been turning to you, yet this has happened anyway. So it's a cry of vindication. And then the last 3 or 4 verses 23 to 26, are a prayer. Come on, wake up, God. Come on, help us out. So essentially, the psalm is in 4 parts. Just to go a little bit deeper into that for a minute. Okay, so the first verses 1 to 8 are essentially saying that our ancestors had some glory times. They trusted in you, O God. You helped them. They didn't trust them, they trusted in you, and things went well for them. So he's talking about in the past, you helped them, the people, they trusted in you, you helped them, and that the covenant was working really well. They had some wonderful times. We've heard about these glory days. They trusted in you, O God, and you helped them. That's the first verses 1 to 8, kind of classic Old Testament stuff. And the next few verses, 9 to 16, are saying that we're talking about now. And it's fascinating here. He says, you have rejected us and helped us. He's talking about now. He's saying things are not going well for us now. And it's quite clear that he blames God for this. yet you have rejected us. You made us turn back from our foe. You have made us like sheep for the slaughter. You have sold us. And the word you, again and again and again. He clearly thinks that things are not good. And he clearly blames God for it. And then the second, verses 13 to 16, the second half of that section, if you like, he's talking about the disgrace that the people find themselves in now. So God has rejected them. And he talks about how they're a byword among the peoples. Everyone looks down on them, they're feeling in disgrace, and so on. So the first 8 verses are saying, in the past, the people trusted in you, God, and you helped them, all good. Now he's saying what's happening is we are trusting in you, like they did, and yet you have rejected us. Things are going badly for us, and we're feeling disgraced because of it as well. That's the second section. The third section, verses 19 to 22, 17 to 22, are essentially saying, look, it's not our fault. We have not turned our back on God. We have been faithful to God. He clearly blames God for what's going on here in no uncertain terms. He said, look, we haven't forgotten the name of our God. We haven't stretched our hands to strange gods. We haven't done anything wrong. And yet this has happened to us anyway. So that's the third section. So he's essentially saying, we're in bad times now, but yet we have, just like our ancestors did, we have trusted in you, and yet you've rejected us. So he clearly is saying, look, this is not our fault, And then the last bit is a prayer, rouse yourself. Why do you sleep, O God? Come and wake up and rise, come into our help and redeem us. So as I say, you've got 4 sections in this psalm. The first time he's talking about, in the past, things were good. In the past, our ancestors trusted in you, O God, and you helped them, and that was good. Now he's saying things are not good. We are trusting in you like they did, and yet you have rejected us, and things are going badly, and we're feeling under disgrace because of it. The third section, essentially, you say, look, we haven't been unfaithful. We haven't turned elsewhere. Yet it's happening to us anyway, and he blames God for it. And then the last bit, he's basically saying, look, please God, can you just wake up and help us, because we need it now. Okay, so there's 4 sections in this psalm. Now, okay, what can we say about this? The first thing we can say is it's honest. Okay, it's honest talk with God. Okay, quite clearly, and quite brutally, extremely courageous honesty with God. This is no grovel here. He's giving it to God with both barrels. And interesting, he talks directly to God. Yeah, you have you. He's talking directly, not talking about God here. He's talking to God. And he's being very honest. And I actually think it's important that we do that as well. I mean, I'm sure we've all felt like this at times in our lives, and some you might be feeling like it now, I don't know. But it's right. God knows we're thinking it. So actually, the best thing to do, I think, is to sort of say it straight. And what is wonderfully refreshing about this is the brutal honesty, of this. And I think God likes straight talk, really. We can shilly-shally around, but it doesn't really tell us a great deal. I think actually it's right that we are honest with God. And David clearly is brutally honest with God. That's the first thing we can say. The second thing we can say is that David clearly sees God at work in the world. He's not blaming coincidences. He's not blaming the weather. He's not blaming anybody else. He clearly sees God at work in his world. He sees the world being influenced by what God is doing. He sees God at work in life. He sees God at work in his world quite clearly. Thirdly, despite all that's happened and how he feels about what things are going for him at the moment, he still believes in God, and he's clearly still trusts in God for the future. He still trusts that God is able to rise up and help. He clearly does have faith in God, and he clearly can see that. And he clearly, despite all that's happened, all that's happening, he still prays to God. He still trusts God now and asks God to help them now. He doesn't give up. He clearly still does have faith, and his faith is clearly being through difficult times, but he still has faith anyway, which is really important. But finally, and I guess we'll never know this really. We don't know what the situation is. The psalm doesn't tell us. It doesn't. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it doesn't. I'd be interested actually if we could know what it was. I'd be interested to talk to David 6 months later and see what he said now with the benefit of wonderful hindsight. Often we can look back, and at the time things can get very difficult. And at times we can be throwing our hands in horror and say, God, what do you think you're doing? Come and help us out. And it feels as though God's fallen asleep, like the disciples did when Jesus was asleep in the boat. The waves thrashing around. Don't you care that we drown? And it can feel like that. But often afterwards we can see I can see it now. What God is doing. And I'll be interested to have a conversation, we hopefully never will, with David a few months down the track as to how he felt about it afterwards. So you've got this fascinating psalm with these 4 parts. Okay, glories of the past. Times are tough now, and he clearly blames God for that. Thirdly, he talks about it's not their fault. He clearly blames God for the situation. And finally, a prayer to God that God would help them. But 4 sort of comments about it. Firstly, the honesty of it, and I think we need to, and we can be honest and straight with God, and we can learn that from this morning. Secondly, David clearly sees God at work in his world, and so even in good times and bad times, he sees God at work in the world. Thirdly, he clearly still has faith. He still trusts God, and he still prays to God, despite all that's happening. And we can learn from that. Faith is not always easy, and we can learn from that as well. And finally, as I said, we never will, but I'd love to have had a conversation a few months later, how David felt about this in the benefit of wonderful hindsight. God bless you, my friends. Have a lovely day. Psalm 45 tomorrow, and enjoy your